Hello everyone, welcome back to MixbusTv and welcome to another rapid fire Q&A. Remember, I need your questions to keep this series that you like so much going, so go crazy in the comment down below. Also, from now on, you can see a join button down here under every video. It means YouTube promoted MixbusTv to be eligible for membership. You can get access to members-only live chats, members-only live streams, posts, and even mix consultation. If you want to know more, click the join button and you will also support the channel. Check the info box down below for my mixing courses and all plugin discounts. Today's question is from Johnny Vegas. My question: what should be considered when mastering a whole album versus a single track? Well, that's a whole different ball game. What to keep in mind? The first thing that I feel like saying is, it will sound obvious, the differences between the various songs. Now, we are talking about the mastering stage. So at this stage, there's only so much you can do to glue the songs together if that wasn't done at the mixing stage first. So if maybe the songs were mixed by different mixing engineers and they didn't hear each other's mix, or were recorded with a long time span between one and another, sometimes happens. And if that's the case, your job in making all the song sounds like an album cohesive is gonna be really hard at the mastering stage. But let's assume we're talking about a pretty cohesive sets of songs with normal differences. What are these normal differences? What to look for when mastering the album? Well, first of all is the three main ranges. So I would say first is the low end, okay? Because there's nothing that throws you off more when you listen to an album than having one song that has a massive solid low end, and then the next one, given the same instrumentation, lacking in low end. That really throws you off while you're listening to the album. It makes the album feel unglued. So the low end, I would say, is the first thing to keep in mind when mastering an album. How to do so? Well, that's kind of logical if you think about it. You do an average. There's gonna be one song that has the biggest low end and one that has the smallest low end. And hopefully in between you won't have that much of a swing. But you still have to average all the other songs given the two extremes, if they're closer to the smaller low end or closer to the bigger low end. At that point, you decide what to do. Let's say you have 10 songs and 6 or 7 of them are closer to the bigger bottom end. In this case, you just pull the one that has the biggest low end of all a little down to fit into the average, okay? The bigger numbers. And then you try to bring the missing 4 or 3 as close as possible as the average at this point, as the bulk of the album. Some differences are gonna be there, of course, because again, you're at the mastering stage, there's only so much you can do, and you don't want to sacrifice more than 50% of the album to have a smaller low end and to sound smaller overall because of those 3-4 songs. So differences are gonna be there. And also is not always a problem, meaning it's important as to why those 3-4 songs have a smaller low end. Or if it's the other way around, those 3-4 have a bigger low end. BPM could be a factor. So if they're faster, they probably have less bottom end. If they are slower ballads, they probably have a bigger bottom end. And those kind of differences, if they are dictated by BPM and arrangement, then it's normal, they're gonna be there, okay? But overall, this is what you do. You gauge where you are, you take the two extremes, you listen to the songs in between, and you gauge what's the big number, how many are closer to one of the two extremes, and then you compensate, try to compensate. That's for the low end. Same goes for the high end, although it's quite different because first of all, you don't have the headroom problems that you have with the low end. So if you have to boost low end and you don't have headroom anymore, you can't. High end, it's hardly a range in which you run out of headroom, okay? You're probably gonna make it harsh before you run out of headroom on the high end because it has nowhere near the energy of the low end. So to match the high end, and today we have amazing tools to check that. For example, I love Ozone Tonal Balance. The new matching EQ it has, it's great for that. You scroll through the songs and first of all, you try to spot which one is the brightest and which one is the dullest. So always check for the two extremes. you will have probably a reference track, a commercial track. So you try to understand if the reference is again closer to the brightest or the dullest one, and then adjust to that. Same goes for the other songs. You do the same thing you do for the low end. Only for the high end, I feel it's different because even a small change in frequency, let's say one song has the most power at 12K and one has the most power at 10K, it will completely change the way we perceive it. So when you scroll through the songs, you need to assess where the energy is in the high range, okay? And then instead of making something, well, if you need to make something brighter or duller, that's fairly easy in mastering, okay? It's usually a couple of EQ moves and you match the brightness. But that's the easy part. The hard part is to match where the energy is. So again, if you have more than half of the songs having one kind of hi-hats or one type of snare, one sounds for snare or hi-hats, one of the two brightest elements, or the vocal could be, they have the most energy at 12K. And then you have 2-3 songs that have more energy around 9 and 10. What you want to do is to shift the energy. Instead of just making brighter or duller or darker, that's what you do in mastering. When you master an album, you shift the energy so both for the bottom end and the high end at this point, so that the two extremes, top and bottom, have the same energy at the same frequency range. Okay, if you look at one of those map plot analyzer where the colors increase more as one frequency has more power, you scroll through the songs and you should see about the same, color in those two extreme range, top and bottom. On the top end, you do that with EQ, and you will also do that with saturation and the enhancers. Those are really good tools in mastering to either enhance, to match a reference, and to making the high end of all the songs cohesive. So those would be the tools for the task. And then of course the mid-range, but this is the most difficult. That's why I leave it for last. So if I master an album that I didn't mix, I start with the bottom, then I do the top end, and I know those two are taken care of. Because for me, it's easier to match those two between songs. And you also have very good tools to actually measure. So it's not just subjective, the way you perceive it, which is the most important thing, but you also have objective tools to gauge where you are. The mid-range, for me, is 90% ears and how you perceive things. And we all perceive things in a different way. So very often I'm surprised that we even like the same stuff because how differently we perceive sounds. But that's the part that I cannot give you tools, I cannot give you advices. The mid-range, it's just gonna have to feel right when you scroll through songs. The only thing that you can do is to just monitor that. So for example, it's not mounted right now, but my monitor controller, the Drummer MC3, I can isolate bands. So low, mid, and high individually. And I can also isolate the mid channel and the side channel for each band. So I can solo the mono on the low end, the sides on the mids, the sides on the high, and all the combinations. So I would say just monitor the mid range and scroll through the songs and see if it feels the same, because of course in the mid-range are gonna be all the solo instrument, lead vocals, lead synths, lead guitar, and all the leads are gonna be different, and most likely they're gonna have different sounds. So it's gonna just have to feel right, as opposed to try to match sound by sound, because it's not gonna be possible. So this, I would put all this in the first EQ move. The description of it, it's long, but it should actually take you not more than 1-2 minutes per song. Once you found the flagship song, so once you found the one or the two songs that maybe they are the singles, maybe the artist point those two songs out as, okay, this is how we sound, everything else needs to match. It should take you about 2 minutes top to match bottom, top, and mid-range for each of the other track. Okay, so that would be the first EQ move. The second thing, of course, it's dynamic. But this is, I feel, it's the one thing that can be more different in an album, song by song. I actually encourage to leave as much dynamic as possible, as long as it doesn't sound all over the place and unglued, both within a song in itself and the whole album. Because dynamics is what makes things interesting. Okay, loud is not loud if everything is loud. You need a quiet moment. Bright is not bright if everything is bright. You need a darker, passage. Same for everything else. The contrast is what makes a song interesting. The contrast is what makes an album interesting, even more. The tools are going to be compression and saturation, used very moderately in mastering. Volume automation first, I would say, even more than compression, but slow leveling, compression, maybe a varimuse, something that just pat the songs on the back. Again, there are going to be songs that are going to be more dynamic than others. BPM is a factor, so consider that in. And also consider if it's, for example, a dance album and it pumps and it moves like that, consider that too. Okay, you want to keep the movement throughout the album. You want to keep the same imprint. Same goes for saturation. If it's a very saturated, if let's say you have most songs that are very saturated and very up in your face and aggressive, you should make the others as aggressive, because one thing that will make things sound so unglued is that. Think about distortion. Let's say you play a guitar with a crunch sound and you play a guitar with a high gain sound. If you were to double these guitar and put them left and right, you couldn't do that. Like, the crunch sound is gonna sound like so different and so just less powerful and aggressive than the other that it will sound weird. That's why we change sound, but we use the same type of saturation. You want crunch, you will have both crunch. You want high gain, you will have high gain left and right. This is pretty much the same parallel to mastering. When you have an album and you have a bunch of songs that are aggressive sounding, given that the others are the same genre, you want to try to bring them there to be as aggressive. Because those, no matter the loudness, no matter the EQ curve and balance that we talked about before, if they don't have that aggressiveness, which is mostly saturation, they will sound weaker. So that's the thing. You have to do this because you cannot do the opposite. If songs are given you saturated, good luck. You're not going to take the saturation away. So you're only, you have to hope they sound good and you have to try to bring the others there. The only thing dynamic related, and the last thing to close this long answer, which was supposed to be a rapid fire, would be the crest factor. That's where dynamics start to become a concern. My super famous video on loudness and crest factor. So if the client asks for a specific kind of level, commercial level, or even if he doesn't, there's gonna be one song that has a higher potential for loudness, meaning it will have the best crest factor. If you don't know what crest factor is and how it affects the final loudness, go watch my video. That's the Bible at this point. So there will be one song that has the highest potential for loudness and one song that has very tall spikes and very bad, so to speak, crest factor, that you will not be able to push as much as the other one. So first of all, you check the difference. So how much is that? Is like 6 dB or like 3 dB RMS or 4 dB RMS when you push this to the limit and you push this to the limit. So get a number. Once you have the difference, and you just slap a limiter on it for the test. Okay, that's not how you master. You put a limiter here, and then you reach the level that the client asks you for, and then you pick the one that has the worst crest factor, and you push it to that level. And this one will not get there without distorting, if that's the case. This is the common problem. Maybe you won't have this problem, but these are the common problems. So you push this track to there where the client wants it, and you will see that will start probably crap out, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 6 dB earlier than that. There's something you can do. Watch my video to see, and watch also my mastering videos to see what to do in this case to better your crest factor. But what you do is you start with the most problematic song and you bring it as high as you can, as closer as you can to what the client wants, reference-wise, without destroying the track. At that point, you will have a second number. So what's the difference now? If before was 7 dB difference between the loudest and the quieter, now we brought this one up here, the difference is like 4. And I can't go more than this. So you need to sacrifice this one and the other ones that are closest to the highest level. And you don't push the loudest one to the extreme, but you bring it down a little bit. You leave it there, okay? So if you're lucky enough, at this point, you will have the loudest and some other tracks, if that was the trend, at the client reference, and these ones that are gonna be 2 or 3 dB lower. Now, at this point, you just simply ask the client, and he could give you different answers. Some are good, some are not. He could tell you, bring these, the lowest one, at the same level, which is the most common thing. Those are quieter, I want them as loud as the other ones. And you will explain, well, they're gonna sound like, you know, pretty crappy, and he will say, I don't care, do it. Otherwise, I will have someone else doing it. And so you do it. You do it and you try to, you know, contain the damage as much as you can. It's out of your hands at that point. The second thing, you could say, yeah, we're good, you know, it's good as is. Or, and this could be dangerous, if they happen to have a listening version of their mixes, of the loudest mixes, maybe the mix engineer did like a quick listening version, slap a limiter and, you know, turn down X amount of dB on the loudest mixes and gave it to listen to the client in the car. They know these songs can be louder. He could ask you to bring them, like, oh, I know my reference mix sounds louder than that, I want them like there. At that point, your difference here is gonna be even worse, and you're gonna have like a hell of a day. But I think these are the things and the common scenarios when mixing, when mastering an album. I also thrown there the possible problems that you can have with a client, but if you're mastering for yourself, yeah, those are still the 3 things that you need to watch. So, but if we want to recap, it would be the general curve for the 3 main ranges. So match the low end, both the frequency range ballpark, doesn't necessarily have to be the same exact frequency, okay? But the energy and the level. High-end brightness and where the energy is, shift it if some songs don't match. Then mid-range, again, this has no advice, just use your ear. That's where the human being comes into play, and that's where the automatic systems, for now, don't work. Then it would be dynamics, which again, I encourage to leave pretty much handle individually. Aggressiveness, we talked about saturation, and then last, loudness. So do what you can to average all the songs at the same reasonable level if you have a client according to what he wants. All right, so I hope this answered the question, Johnny, and all of you guys. I hope this video was useful for everybody. If you liked it, please don't forget to leave a like. Again, I need your questions to keep this going, so go crazy in the comment. Check the join button if you want to become a MixbusTv member and have access to exclusive content, and also help MixbusTv. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time.